Skinflick, a Dave Brandstetter mystery, Book 5. Author, Joseph Hansen. Publisher, Open Road Integrated Media. Narrator, Eric Aust. In memory of Dr. Dreadful, who left too soon. Chapter 11. Lieutenant Ken Barker of the LAPD said, "The strip's not even city. You know that? It's county. You have to see the sheriff." He sat behind a green steel desk strewn with file folders, report forms, photographs. He was in a room partitioned off by glass and green steel from a wide glass and green steel room where telephones jingled, typewriters rattled, men laughed, coughed, grumbled. Barker's nose was broken, his shoulders strained, the seams of his shirt, his collar was open, tie dragged down, cuffs turned back. He was sweating. He drank from a waxed paper cup printed with orange swirls. Shaved ice rattled in the cup. He set it down. "Christ! Is this weather ever going to let up?" "It's too much of a coincidence," Dave said. 2 murders a night. It's damn near normal. You tell me how they could be more different. A broken neck in Hillcrest. A shotgun blast away out west in a parking lot." "There's a connection," Dave said. "Spence Odom rents his lights and cameras and recorders from the company Dawson was a partner in." "Don't a lot of people," Barker said. "How many outfits like that are there? From what you tell me about Odom's operation, they sure as hell couldn't keep solving if he was their only customer." "He was their only customer who had a cameraman murdered the same night as Dawson," Dave said. "And that's not all. Dawson was sleeping with a teenage hooker called Charlene something, who told people on the strip she was about to get into the movies and who had a poster from a Spence Odom picture on her wall, and who disappeared the same night as Dawson and Ludwig died." "They go off," Barker said. "The proud callers see them every night, like matches in the dark, and then they don't see them anymore. Some middle-aged account executive with holes in his superego takes them on an expense account jet ride to Vegas. Some John, right? And strands them there. So they sit in some casino with a dead drink in one hand and a silver dollar in the other, till the next John offers them $20 bed and breakfast. And the next, until they meet some crazy," Dave said, "who carves them up and puts them in a plastic bag with your name and address in it." "I thought of that." Barker's eyes were gunmetal color, about the same gray as his hair. They regarded Dave for a few seconds. "You are a terrible man," he said. "Did you know that?" "You've got one now," Dave said. Barker stood up, chair backing to deepen a dent in file cabinets behind him. "Skinny little blonde. We've had her for a week. No ID. The body didn't make much of a rise in the sheets that covered it. It didn't take up much room on the long steel slab that attendant in the green smock pulled on silent rollers out of a wall." Barker laid the sheet back. She had hardly any breast at all. She was greenish pale except for the slash down her front made by the medical examiner and the cut where her scalp had been laid back and then replaced. The hair was the color of sun-bleached southwest hillside grass between yellow and white. There were bruises on her throat, scratches. "Strangled," Dave said. Barker opened a file folder. "Right. Also skull fracture. Also raped. And," he pulled the sheet all the way down, "she once had polio. One leg shorter than the other." Dave looked at it. It was stick-like, the knee a pitiful outsized knob. He took the edge of the sheet and covered the girl up again. "I don't think it's her," he said. "And nobody mentioned any limp. One of my witnesses said she danced well. This one may have danced. I hope so. But it can't have been well." He called thanks to the attendant in the elevator. Barker said, "Did Odom tell you he hired your girl, Charlene?" "He only got nervous," Dave said, and pressed for time. They got off the elevator. "Did you ask him about Ludwig?" "I didn't know about Ludwig then," Dave said. "You don't know about him now." Back at his desk, Barker emptied a heavy, sharp-cornered glass ashtray into a metal wastebasket. "He was in this country illegally. Ludwig wasn't even his name. He was scared to use it. He was scared to surface enough even to work where he might be noticed. Columbia Paramount. He had a big reputation in Europe, Dave said. Oh, so you do know, Barker said. I know that, Dave said. What else is there? The Hungarian party had it in for him. His story was they were chasing him all over the world to kill him. The telephone on Barker's desk rang. He lifted the receiver, listened a minute, grunted. Thanks, and hung up. He looked at Dave. And they found him. And they killed him. Didn't they? Why was he illegal? A prominent artist. They don't have trouble defecting. I left my lamp beside the... It would make headlines. The baddies would get him. Sounds like paranoia to me, Dave said. The kind that gets you killed, Barker said. Maybe, Dave said. It's neat, but neatness isn't everything. He stood up. So who do I see at the sheriff's department? You know all about it. So you looked into it. So you thought the way I think, that there might be some connection. Who do I talk to over there? Salazar, Barker said. But it's the way I told you. Ask Ludwig's widow if you want confirmation. Salazar will give you her address. Dave picked up the receiver of Barker's phone. How do I get a outside line? He said. The apartment was old tan brick, down a side street from Melrose in Hollywood. The windows were small, cracked plaster Egyptian pillars flanked the door to a dark hallway that went straight to the back. At one side of the hallway, stairs went up. They were about to be boxed in by walls and a door. New fire regulations. The framework of 2x4s was already in. The smell of fresh sawn pine was pleasant, nearly covering the sad, sour smell of too many decades of living that seeped through the desperately fresh paper on the walls. The hopelessly fresh carpeting he walked on. Number 6 was the last door in the downstairs hallway. After he pressed the buzzer, he looked out the rear window. A pair of cats lay curled asleep in the sun on the green tin lid of a big trash module by a chain link fence. Marigolds struggled in a strip of parched earth against the fence. He saw the stucco corner of a garage. A lock clicked inside the door. The varnish on the door was laid over 50 years of earlier varnish and was nearly black. The door opened 4 inches. The face that peered out at him was bone white, almost fleshless, with fierce patches of rouge. Black lines had been drawn around eyes, large, dark, but more annoyed than frightened. What do you want? She had a thick accent, and her voice was a gasp. Who are you? My name is Brandstetter. He held open his wallet so she could read the license. I'm an insurance investigator. My husband did not have... She tried to close the door. He put his foot in it. Please, I have no time. Another man was murdered on the same night as your husband, Dave told her. It's about his death I want to talk to you. I think the two might be connected. Someone innocent is going to suffer if I can't clear the matter up. Her laugh was harsh and turned into a hacking cough. Someone innocent is going to suffer. That will be a novelty in this world. Her eyes went angry, her voice scornful. The innocent are always the ones who suffer. What kind of man are you not to know that? I told you, Dave said, the kind that wants to prevent it, if I can. You want to help me or not? She shut the door. A chain rattled. She opened the door. The rest of her was as wasted as her face. She clutched an armload of clothes to the flat bosom of a faded shirt. A green dish towel was tied over her hair. From what he could see of it, the hair was sparse. It started far back on her brow. She wore jeans that hung off skeletal hips. The jeans weren't roomy. She'd shrunk away inside them. He thought she was very sick and that she had once been very beautiful. She went and laid the armload of clothes in a big scuffed leather suitcase that lay open on a Danish couch with scratched woodwork and threadbare plaid cushions. A small suitcase lay on a chair. There was a brand new, shiny red metal footlocker. Who was this other fortunate man? She asked. Gerald Dawson. His business was renting film equipment. The camera your husband used for expense Odom? I do not know him. She lit a cigarette, the old-fashioned kind, short and thick, no tip. The first intake of smoke started her coughing. It racked her, bent her over. It sounded like ripping canvas. The cigarette hanging in her garishly lipsticked mouth. She clung to the back of a chair till the cough stopped shaking her. She whispered, "He never mentioned the name. Was he Hungarian? It sounds like not a Hungarian name, Dawson." He was an American who went to church a lot. Her wry smile showed teeth of surprising whiteness and evenness. He thought she was 50. The teeth said 30. They would not be friends, she said. My husband was an artist, an intellectual. He regarded religion as superstition. The cigarette bobbed as she spoke. Smoke from it trickled up into an eye. She squinted that eye. He distrusted systems of thought. He felt they cramped the mind and made fools of people. She went into a farther room and came back with another armload of clothes. He said religion only caused hatred and bloodshed. He was an intelligent man and a gifted one. You must not think he filmed only sex pictures for vermin like this Spence Odom. I don't, Dave said. Why did he do it here? She knelt to lay the clothes in the footlocker. She looked up at Dave. He had made enemies in Hungary. He would not keep quiet about the horrors of the regime. When they tried and jailed a friend who was a writer, he spoke out. If he had not fled, they would have killed him. But he never made any speeches in the West, Dave said. He didn't come out as a dissident. He didn't lay charges about this writer. For my sake, she said. For the sake of relatives left behind in Hungary. So he was out of the way and was no harm to them, Dave said. Why would they come here and kill him? She shrugged and stood. Sick as she looked, she moved like a girl trained in grace. Maybe she'd been an actress. He would not tell me what lay behind his fear. He wanted me to know nothing, in case I should be caught and tortured. Did you ever think perhaps he imagined it? He did not imagine his own death, she said. And that was quite a reality, was it not? Yes, but the killer hasn't been caught, Dave said. Maybe it wasn't someone from Hungary. Maybe instead it had to do with Gerald Dawson's murder. No, she shook her head. They were following him, always. He saw them in Portugal, and the same ones again in Brazil, and the same ones again in Canada. He saw them, Dave said. Did you see them? No, I did not, but that means nothing. She looked hard at Dave. He was not mad. How can you think that when this has happened? What about here? Dave said. Did he tell you he'd seen them here? No. He told me we had escaped them at last. Bitterly, she twisted out her cigarette in an ashtray on a cheap teak veneer end table. A lamp whose tweedy white shade years in cigarette smoke had yellowed stood on the table. So did a 5x7 photograph in a dime store frame. She picked up the photograph and gazed at it. And then in a dark parking lot, 7,000 miles from Budapest, they killed him. With the sleeve of the old blouse, she wiped the glass on the photograph and laid it on the folded clothes in the footlocker. She stood looking down at it, motionless. And now I can go home. She turned Dave the wry smile again. I never said it to him, of course, but I was dying to go home. A bleak laugh rustled in her throat. And now I'm going home to die. Isn't it funny? Dave didn't answer. He had stepped over to the footlocker. He was looking down at the photograph. It was black and white against a background of river and bridge. A man and woman stood close. The woman was lovely. A breeze blew the picture hat she wore, fluttered the ribbons she hung onto the hat, and smiled at the camera. Her arm was around the waist of a big, grinny man, barrel-shaped, soft-looking. Frizzy, fair hair stood out all over his head. Gay Mysteries audiobooks. I think it is easy to hate a label, but a face humanizes the word. So this effort is twofold. To offer comfort to those like myself that your world didn't end because you don't fit into the view of acceptable society on both sides. and in hopes of helping those with family that are LGBTQ, that it doesn't mean we are aliens from the child they once knew. Reassure them so they can maybe be supportive at the same time, being true to their values.